word transversal. It's a line that intersects two or more lines. This line right here is going to be our transversal, line T. It intersects two lines. When we talk about corresponding angles, corresponding or in the same spot, I would like you to put angle 1 and angle 5 in this picture. 1 and 5 correspond. Now usually we're going to talk about those with parallel lines, and then they're really special when you have parallel lines because they're going to have, you'll see in this video, they're going to have different angles that are congruent. But if you look at this picture, line L and line M are not parallel to each other. So 1 and 5. There's another set. 2 and what is in the same spot down below? Angle 2 and angle 6. Does it make sense that 2 and 6 are kind of above each of those lines? So 2 and 6. You would have more pairs, like 3 and 7 would correspond, and 4 and 8. When we talk about alternating interior angles, we have 4 angles on our interior, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Alternating sides of the line would be like angle 3, please write this in your notes, and angle 5. There's one more pair of alternating interior. That would be, besides 3 and 5, 4 and 6, right? So 4 and 6 would also be there. When we talk about alternating exterior, that would be like angle 1 and on the opposite side of that line, alternating would be 1 and, it has to be exterior. So we have 1, 2, 7, 8. 1 and 8 would be same side exterior. Angle 1 and angle 8 are same side exterior. So we would have 1 and 7. We could also have 2 and 8, right? 2 and 8 are alternating. If we have same side interior, 3 and 5 were alternating interior up here. So we should have 3 and 6, right? They're on the same side of that transversal. So when they talk about alternating or same side, they're always referencing it with this transversal line. So when you think of the transversal, we're always kind of looking at it in terms of on one side or the other of that line. So as we watch this video, the video is going to show us kind of how we can think of those angles and them being congruent. The key questions you want to be answering: what happens when a transversal intersects parallel lines? So you're going to be watching in the video for what happens. Then you're going to be asked what types are congruent. You should have 3 different types here. So you should get 3 different names when you are looking at this as you watch the video, okay? And then it says which type of angles are not going to be congruent, and we're thinking about the definitions from this last page. So corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, same side and same side, interior and exterior. Those are the words that I'm kind of looking for as you would be filling this in. So as we watch this video,
we already know that angles with equal measures are congruent. We can use our understanding of angle measures to find unique angle relationships that exist with parallel lines. We can compare the angles on the left side of the bookcase by measuring with a protractor. The angle formed by the shelf and the left side of the case is 100 degrees. We can translate this angle down and left to see if they are congruent. As we translate down, we see that all of the angles have the same measure, therefore they are congruent. All of the shelves are lines that are parallel to each other. If we extended the shelves in each direction, they would not cross at any point. We use arrows like these to designate when lines are parallel.
so these lines, arrows,
The sides of the bookcase cross each of the shelves. We call these lines transversals. A transversal is a line that crosses at least 2 other lines. We can think of the shelves as getting closer and closer to one another to represent parallel lines that get closer and closer together. As the lines translate down onto the next one, The angles also translate with them. In this way, we can see the angles remain the same. When two parallel lines are crossed by a transversal, spaces are created. Let's zoom in on a piece of the bookcase. The interior is the area inside the parallel lines. The exterior is the area outside the parallel lines. From our earlier measurements, we know the lower right angles are congruent. We can use this symbol to represent their congruence. These angles are called corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are in the same position on different parallel lines, and they are always congruent. Using the same angle measures as before, we can use what we know about vertical angles to find this angle. The angle measures must be equal because the vertical angles are equal. These become alternate exterior angles. Alternate exterior angles are located on the opposite or alternating sides of the transversal. They are also on the outside or on the exterior of the parallel lines. Alternate exterior angles are always congruent. Again, using our 50-degree angle measure, we can use our knowledge of vertical angles to find this angle. Now we see another type of angle called alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are on opposite or alternating sides of the transversal. They are also on the inside or interior of the parallel lines. Alternate interior angles are always congruent. When a transversal crosses parallel lines, it creates special angle relationships. We can find angle measures using the congruence of corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, and alternate exterior angles.
So when we are taking a look at ours, as we looked at our picture, what happens when a transversal intersects parallel lines? That was our first question. So one of the first things that we are going to look at when we take that transversal and it intersects these two parallel lines. So this one, our transversal is this line. It is always going to create angles around here that are going to sum to these two angles, angle 1 and angle 1 and angle 2 are going to sum to how many degrees? 90. So these two that are right next to each other on a straight line are 180 degrees, right? They are supplementary, angle 1 and 2. The three types of angles. The first one you should have had was corresponding. Congruent means that they are going to be equal. Okay? So types of angles that are always going to be equal are corresponding, alternate interior, and I think they gave alternate exterior first. This is the page that you're going to want to use when we do your homework for naming all of them. And then this one is going to be alternate interior. So please make sure you have those three types written down. Alternate interior, alternate exterior, and corresponding. On your picture down here, we are going to number going around here. So if I'm numbering my angles, I would like you to number yours so that you have angle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So on your picture, number those. And what we're going to do is right below our corresponding, we're going to list all of the ones that correspond. Then we're going to list all of our alternate exterior and all of our alternate interior. When we look at corresponding, angle 1 and angle 5 correspond. They are in the same spot with our parallel lines. They will be equal in measure. Another pair would be angle 2, and down below in the same spot would be angle 6. So angle 1, if I would tell you that that happens to be 100 degrees, angle 5 corresponds and will also be 100. If 1 is 100, what do we know the measure of angle 2 has to be? 80. because these two are supplementary. And 2 and 6 will be the same. What will be the same as angle 3? Angle 3 and 5 in the same spot down below would be 7 are going to correspond. So correspond means that like they're in the exact same spot, only they're down on the next line down. And then my last pair should be angle 4 and angle 8 are in the same spot. When we look at alternating exterior, one of the first things with that alternating exterior is we need to make sure we are looking at this transversal. So when we talk about alternating, we're talking about on opposite sides of that highlighted transversal. Alternating and exterior. Well, my exterior is out here. This is the exterior. This is also exterior. So we only have 4 angles in our exterior, and this is our interior. So of our 4 angles, 1, 2, 7, 8, angle 1 and on the opposite side on the exterior will be angle 7. So 1 and 7 are alternating exterior. Angle 2 and angle what are we looking at? 2 and 8. I now want you to try and list 2 pairs of alternate interior. So list them first on your paper. So interior we have 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if I start with angle 3, 3 and 5, right? Angle 4 and angle 6. Now, all of these will be congruent. Okay? Move your desk over that way. Move your desk over that way. So if I'm looking at this and this is 100, I know that these two are vertical angles. That means this one has to be 100 degrees also. I know down here, because they're alternating exterior, this one has to be 100 degrees. If this is 100 degrees, I know that angle 5 must also be 100 degrees. And then I can fill in all my ones that are 80. So I might only give you one angle, and you're going to be asked to find the rest of the angles as you look at this. As you're looking at that next page in your notes, so it says what types of angles are not going to be congruent. The ones that are not congruent, I want you to write down same side exterior and same side interior. And when we refer to the same side, we're talking about this transversal. So those ones will not be congruent, same side exterior and same side interior. What will happen with those is that they will both sum to 180. If I'm looking at same side interior, that would be angle 4 plus angle 5. And they have to equal 180. They are supplementary. So if I know that angle 5 is 100 degrees, what do I know angle 4 has to be? 80 degrees. Has to be the same as angle 2 because they're vertical. So there's many different ways of looking at the different angles as you go around here. Same thing with same side exterior. That would be like 2 and 7. 2 and 7 have to total to 180. So in this next part, I'm going to show you how we can prove this. As I'm showing you, I want you to write down what's below these 2 boxes. So I'll put those 2 things here for you. Here's what I need for you to write. If we're going to show corresponding angles are congruent, if I would cut on this dashed line, and I cut it, and then I translate, just meaning I pick up this part and I move it over, you would see the angles are going to line up. How do I know vertical angles are congruent? If I would reflect on this dotted line, the top part is going to match up and go right over that bottom part, and the angles would be the same measure. So if I have angle 2, when I look at my picture, angle 2, if I fold it over this line, I'm going to be able to see it match up exactly with angle 4. The other thing is that I'm looking at this picture. if I take this one and I simply translate, so if I'm taking this picture and I slide it over right on top of this one, we're going to be able to see that those angles are exactly the same or congruent as I'm looking at my picture. So when I look at this, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and before, if we look at that and I move it back, right, we had 5, 6, 7, and 8, right? So angle 2 and angle 6 correspond. 3 and 7 are exactly the same. 4 and 8, 1 and 5, and they will always be congruent when I take a look at those, okay? So when I'm looking at those two angles, if I'm looking at those, that's how I know that they are congruent. They are going to line up. That bottom, next page. My two angles, okay? This angle right here of 40 plus y plus 80. So this angle plus this one have to total to 180. So 40 plus 80 gives me 120. So I have 120 plus y equals 180. Y has to be equal to 60 degrees, right? How do I know 60 degrees? Because 60 plus 40 plus 80 is going to give me 180. So when you're doing your homework tonight, you're going to have a picture something like this one, and you're going to be asked first to name the types of angles. When you are naming the types of angles, the first thing we want to take a look at, 1 and 15. So key thing is on our two pictures here, these angles are parallel. Angle L and angle M are parallel. And I have another set of parallel lines, and that is angle Q is also parallel to P. So those are key figures, and when you look at the lines, by putting these little triangles on them, that tells us that these two lines are parallel. Same thing here. So if they have something like these little arrows on them, that tells you the lines are parallel. So when I take a look at 15 in relation to the 105, Elijah, what kind of angles are they? 15 to 105. So if I look at 1 and 15, so 1 and 15 between these two parallel lines, L and M, how are they related? They are going to be the same, but they're called alternate because they're on opposite sides of line P. So we're going to put alternate, what type? Exterior or interior? Exterior. Alternate exterior. So the first ones in your homework also are just going to ask you to name them. If I look at 5 and 8, Tanisha, what do I know about 5 and 8? They are vertical angles. If I am looking at, Jerica, if I'm going to take a look at 7 and 10. 7 and 10, what do I know? Alternate exterior. And are they alternating or same side exterior? When we look at that, are they on the same side of this transversal line here? They're on the same side. So this one should be same side, and it should be exterior. I agree with the exterior part. So the first part of your homework is going to ask you to reference how do they look, comparing them. This is the page right here that you're going to want to use when you do your homework. We're not done with this one. We need to finish these last few questions. As we are finishing, it's going to ask you to explain how to find the measure 12. So 12 in relation to 105. Those are, we're going to say angle 12 is an alternate interior. So you're always asked in your homework, if you don't give the reason why it is, you're asked to give that reason first. So we're going to say they're alternate interior, which means the measure of angle 12 must be equal to 105 degrees. says explain how to find the measure of angle 5. In relation to this angle 105 and 5, angle 5 corresponds. Please write this in your notes. Angle 5 corresponds to angle, or to 105 degrees, which means the measure of angle 5 will be 105 degrees. So corresponding and alternate interior are going to be the same. Angle 13 in relation to 105. Zach, what do we think these ones are called? In between these two parallel lines, P and Q. And they are on the same side or alternating? No sound effects. So are these on the same side of this transversal? Same side. So we are going to say to the 105 degree angle, we have the same side interior, which means that the measure of angle 13 has to be 75 degrees. 13 and the 105 have to total to 180. So these two angles together have to total to 180, which means it's going to be 75. And if we were going to find angle 10 in relation to 105, what would we say, Morgan, in relation to 105 from last week? 10 is what kind of an angle? Vertical. So we are going to say angle 10 is vertical to 105. And if it is vertical to 105 degrees, that means it must also equal 105 degrees. So the measure of angle 10 equals 105 degrees. So when you do your homework and you're starting off, most of you should probably not have too much of a problem doing 1 through 4. Same thing as you look over here. I would like you right now to look at problem number 10.